Ever imagine uh, stepping into Warren Buffett's shoes,
Yeah.
just for a day
Yeah.
to see how he analyzes a company?
That'd be fascinating.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're doing today.
Oh,
We're
cool.
taking a deep dive into Applied Materials, ticker symbol AM.
AMAT. Okay.
And we're going to be applying his meticulous approach, kind of unearthing the company and really understanding it.
Okay, well, AMAT's a really interesting company. They are absolutely essential to the semiconductor industry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they make the equipment that makes the chips.
So the chips that are in everything,
Pretty much.
like smartphones, cars.
Cars, refrigerators, I mean, you name it. It's got a chip in it, and AMAT probably had something to do with it.
Wow. That's incredible. And if you want to learn more about companies like this that are kind of the hidden gems of the tech world, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
Speaking of those hidden gems,
Yeah.
AMAT's business model is really interesting. It's not just about selling these really complex machines. They also generate revenue from a range of services.
Services. Okay, like what? What kind of services?
Well, it's kind of like if you buy a state-of-the-art 3D printer, you're going to need filament, you're going to need software updates, and maybe you even need a technician to come out and, fix it when it jams, which it inevitably will.
Right.
Well, AMAT provides all of that for their customers, which are semiconductor manufacturers. So they do the installation, the maintenance, they make sure it's optimized for peak performance. It's not just a transaction, it's really a long-term partnership.
That's smart. So they're not just handing off the machine and saying, see you later.
No.
They're really there for the whole process.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. But our research showed that they also generate revenue from licensing their technology.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's another stream of revenue.
That's right. It's really quite strategic. Decades of innovation has yielded a treasure trove of patents and intellectual property, so licensing their technology to other players in the industry is a natural extension of their expertise.
Okay, so they're kind of like the holder of the secret recipe,
Exactly.
and everyone wants a taste. So who are these customers? You mentioned chip makers, but are there any other major players?
Oh, yeah. You've got your semiconductor giants, of course, companies like Intel, Samsung.
Right.
But it goes beyond that. They also work with display manufacturers,
Right.
even solar panel companies. Their customer base is very diverse.
Wow, they really do have a wide reach. It's no wonder they have such a big piece of the market share.
Yeah, we're talking about a market share of around 17%, making them the second largest supplier globally.
Wow, that's huge. And remember that global chip shortage a while back. Seems like AMAT has a pretty big role in preventing that from happening again.
That's right.
That's pretty powerful. But moving on from this fascinating business model, I want to get into the people running the show.
Okay.
Chapter 2, Management Evaluation. Who's the mastermind behind AMAT's success?
You've probably heard of Gary Dickerson. He's been CEO since 2013. He's a true veteran of the semiconductor world, over 35 years of experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a wealth of knowledge he must have. So he obviously knows the ins and outs of the industry, but just having experience doesn't guarantee success.
Right.
What are some of his specific achievements or strategic decisions that demonstrate his leadership?
Well, under Dickerson's leadership, AMAT has reached record-breaking financial performance. But what really makes him stand out is his vision. He's the one who spearheaded the EPIC platform.
EPIC platform, what's that?
EPIC stands for Equipment and Process Innovation and Commercialization. And it's this really innovative ecosystem where they bring together not just their customers, but also universities, suppliers, and even competitors, all to collaborate on next-gen semiconductor technology.
Wait, competitors?
Yeah.
They collaborate with their competitors?
Yeah.
That's a really bold strategy. What's the logic behind that?
I know, right? It might seem counterintuitive, but it's actually really smart. By bringing together all these resources, the expertise, even the intellectual property, they can speed up innovation. They can solve challenges that would be too big for just one company. It's not just about competition, it's about collective progress for the whole industry.
That's a really unique approach. It's kind of like they're saying, let's raise the bar for everybody,
Exactly.
even if it helps our rivals.
Yeah.
It really shows their commitment to the long term.
Definitely.
And speaking of long-term vision, let's move on to Chapter 3, Financial Health.
Okay.
Give us the highlights. Is AMAT as financially strong as they seem?
In a nutshell, they're not just doing well, they're thriving.
Okay.
Their revenue has grown from, at this, $5 billion in 2009 to an incredible $27 billion in 2024.
Wow, that's not just growth. That's like astronomical.
Yeah.
What's fueling that massive expansion?
Well, It's a few things. Obviously, the demand for semiconductors is huge. You've got tech advancements in pretty much every sector. Right.
Like AMAT's in a great position to ride that wave.
It's like they're surfing a tech tsunami.
Exactly.
But impressive revenue is only one part of the equation.
Right.
What about profitability? Are they actually making good money?
They sure are. Their profitability is impressive. A gross margin of over 47% in 2024.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging. What about their debt-to-equity ratio? That's a sign of responsible financial management, real?
It is, and AMAT's is nice and low.
That means they're not over-leveraged, right?
Exactly. They're managing their finances very well.
What about their free cash flow? That's essential for future growth, isn't it?
It is, and AMAT's free cash flow is really robust. Plenty of resources to invest in R&D, make acquisitions, and reward shareholders. They're in a strong financial position. This is all great information, but we've really only just scratched the surface here. Stay tuned for the second half of our deep dive, where we'll be taking a look at market sentiment, ownership structure, and doing a full risk assessment using a SWOT analysis. And in the meantime, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below with any stocks you'd like us to deep dive into in the future.
Yeah, we'd love to know.
We love a challenge. And don't forget, you can find links to all the sources we've used for this deep dive in the description below.
All right.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Applied Materials.
Part 2.
We've laid the groundwork. We've talked about their business model, their leadership, their financial health. Now let's see what the market thinks of them.
Okay.
Chapter 4, Market Sentiment.
So now we get to see how AMAT is perceived out there in the world of investors.
Exactly. We know how we feel about AMAT. But does the market share our enthusiasm? What's the overall sentiment?
Oh, it's very positive. Analysts are predicting some pretty strong stock appreciation with price targets exceeding $200.
$200. That's pretty optimistic. It is. So the market seems to agree with us that AMAT's got a promising future.
It does.
But what's driving all this positivity? Is it just their past performance, or are there other factors at play?
It's a combination of things. Their recent performance has been excellent, and that's partly thanks to those interest rate cuts.
Oh, of course. Lower borrowing costs mean that chip manufacturers can invest more in new equipment.
Exactly. And AMAT benefits directly from that.
Right. When money's cheap, companies are going to upgrade, they're going to expand their operations, and AMAT, as a top supplier, is going to reap the rewards.
Right. Plus, you've got the AI boom. The demand for AI technology is exploding.
It is, yeah.
And all that AI needs, increasingly powerful and sophisticated chips. And AMAT is at the forefront of supplying the equipment needed to make those chips.
So they're not just riding the wave, they're providing the surfboard.
That's a good way to put it.
But, even with all these tailwinds, there's always risks, right? No investment is completely immune to market fluctuations.
That's true. You always have to be aware of the risks. And one thing to consider here is the U.S. export restrictions to China.
Oh, right.
It's a big market for AMAT, so any disruption there could have an impact.
That's a good point. Geopolitics can have a huge impact on a company's success, especially in a global industry like semiconductors. Shows how important diversification is.
Definitely.
Okay, to really understand who's betting on AMAT's future, let's move on to Chapter 5. Ownership structure.
Okay, let's take a look at who owns the company.
Is it a mix of individual investors, or is it mainly institutional ownership?
It's definitely skewed towards institutional ownership. Around 83% of the stock is held by institutions.
83%.
Yeah, the big players like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
So some of the savviest investors in the world are clearly confident in AMAT's potential.
It seems so.
What about insider holdings? Are the people running the company putting their money where their mouth is?
Insider holdings are relatively low, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is worth noting that there's been some insider selling recently.
Interesting. We'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Always good to be aware of all the angles. All right, we've covered their business model, leadership, financials, market sentiment, and ownership structure. Let's put it all together and do a full risk assessment in Chapter 6.
Okay, SWOT time.
Exactly. We're going to use the classic SWOT analysis to look at AMAT's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
I love a good SWOT analysis. Gives you a real 360-degree view of the company. So let's start with those strengths.
What are the key factors positioning AMAT for success?
Well, first off, their market position is really strong. 17% market share, second largest global supplier. That's That's not easy to achieve.
No, that's pretty dominant.
Plus, they have great brand recognition and a solid reputation in the industry.
Yeah, reputation is so important in a complex field like semiconductors. It speaks volumes about their quality and their customer relationships.
Absolutely. And behind that reputation is a huge patent portfolio, a real focus on intellectual property. They're constantly innovating, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So they're not just resting on their laurels.
Yeah,
They're always looking to the future.
they are. And don't forget about those economies of scale. Their size and efficient manufacturing processes help them keep costs down, stay competitive on price.
Right. And once a company adopts AMAT's equipment, it's not easy for them to switch to another supplier.
Not really, no. The switching costs are high.
So AMAT's got this really solid foundation of strengths.
They do.
But even the strongest companies have their vulnerabilities. What are some weaknesses we should be aware of?
The biggest one is their dependence on the cyclical nature of the semiconductor industry. When the chip market dips, AMAT's business feels it.
Right. They're not immune to the ups and downs of the industry.
No,
It's a good reminder that diversification is key.
absolutely. And then there are the geopolitical risks,
Ah, those
Oh.
again.
especially those related to China. The U.S. export restrictions could really impact their revenue.
It's a good example of how even the best-run companies are vulnerable to external forces. Any other weaknesses that come to mind?
Well, there's the potential for supply chain disruptions.
Oh, of course.
You know, we saw during the pandemic how fragile global supply chains can be. Any company that relies on complex manufacturing like AMAT is going to be vulnerable to those kinds of disruptions.
Right. If their supply of raw materials or components gets interrupted, it could really affect their production and their profitability.
Definitely. And then there's the talent shortage.
Oh, right.
The whole semiconductor industry is struggling to find and retain skilled engineers and technicians.
It's a battle for talent.
That-
All right. We've seen the strengths. We've seen the weaknesses. Let's move on to the opportunities. AMAT seems pretty well positioned to take advantage of some major tech trends. What opportunities do you see for them?
Well, there are the booming markets in AI, Internet of Things, 5G,
Right. All those areas are growing incredibly fast.
and they all need semiconductors to power them, so the demand is only going to increase.
It's like the picks and shovels during the gold rush.
Exactly.
Everyone's focused on striking gold, developing the AI and the IoT applications, but AMAT is providing the tools they need to make it happen.
Right. And then there's always the possibility of growth through acquisitions.
Acquisitions. Classic growth strategy.
Acquire smaller companies with complementary technology, expand their offerings, reach new markets.
Mar?
Yeah.
But every opportunity comes with its own set of challenges. What are some of the threats that could hinder AMAT's success?
The biggest one is competition.
Of course.
The semiconductor equipment market is very competitive. Companies like ASML, Lam Research, Tokyo Electron, they're all fighting for market share.
Yeah, it's a constant race to stay ahead of the curve. Innovate, optimize, or get left behind.
That's right. And then there's the risk of technological obsolescence.
Right. What's cutting edge today could be outdated tomorrow.
Exactly. And on top of that, we've got increasing regulatory hurdles around mergers and acquisitions. Governments are getting more cautious about letting big tech companies consolidate power.
I see. So AMAT's going to have to be really strategic about how they navigate those regulatory complexities. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at AMAT from all angles: their business, their leadership, their financials, the market sentiment, their ownership structure, even the risks they face. It's been a really thorough analysis,
It has.
but we're not done yet. Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our findings and take a look at what the future holds for AMAT and the semiconductor industry. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into applied materials.
The grand finale.
We've really dug deep, analyzed their business, leadership, financials, market sentiment, even looked at the risks.
Yeah, it's been comprehensive.
So, as we put all these pieces together, what's the takeaway for our listeners who might be considering AMAT as an investment?
Well, if you're looking for a company that's firmly rooted in a growing industry, with a solid track record of innovation and profitability, AMAT certainly ticks a lot of boxes.
They really do. And they're committed to sustainability and good corporate governance. I think that's appealing to a lot of investors these days.
Absolutely. But like with any investment, there are always risks.
Right.
You know, the semiconductor industry, as we've talked about, is cyclical,
Uh-huh.
and geopolitics can play a big role.
True. It's not a sure thing.
Yeah.
But hey, our deep dive has given our listeners the knowledge they need to make an informed decision.
Hopefully.
Before we wrap up, one last question.
Okay.
We get a really good picture of where AMAT is today.
Uh-huh.
But what about tomorrow?
Ah, the crystal ball question.
What's next for this company? What's next for the whole semiconductor industry?
That's the million-dollar question. This industry is constantly evolving.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. New technologies are popping up all the time. AI, that's just the beginning. We're seeing huge breakthroughs in things like quantum computing,
Yeah.
which has the potential to completely revolutionize everything. Drug discovery, material science, I mean, the possibilities are mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. It's exciting to think about.
It is. And AMAT's right there, on the leading edge of all of this, investing in R&D, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in semiconductor manufacturing.
So the future looks bright, both for AMAT and the entire industry.
I'd say so.
If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to tech, hit that subscribe button.
Please do.
And let us know in the comments what other companies you'd like us to investigate. We're always open to suggestions.
Always.
And one last reminder, this deep dive was for informational purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decision.
That's right. Do your homework.
We leave you with this thought. The semiconductor industry. It's the engine that drives tech progress. What innovations do you think are going to shape its future? Let us know your predictions in the comments.
I can't wait to read them.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep.